CMPRadio.net, the voice of Chester.
These are the signs of love making. Signs of love making. These are the signs of love making. Signs of love making.
Welcome back to another episode of Straight to the Point, hosted by Adelaide Evans. Can y'all actually believe that today is my one month anniversary, my 5th podcast? Can y'all believe that? I'm still a little taken back from it, but it's absolutely rewarding in a sense. So tonight's guest is David Irizarry. He is the Superintendent of Juvenile Justice Systems for Delaware County. Let's welcome David.
Thank you. Happy to be here. David Irizarry. Again, I'm newly hired superintendent here in Delaware County, really trying to look at twofold, right? So what does a potential new facility look like, as well as what services do community members need in order to be successful, particularly young people.
Okay, so let's scale it back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Who is David Irizarry?
So David Irizarry, I think I look at myself as a public servant, right? I take pride in being your every average day kind of individual, right? I've worked in city government for well over a decade now. Started in the city of Philadelphia, through the Mike Nutter administration addressing gun violence. I held that position for about 10 years and transitioned over here. And it really was an opportunity really to help young people, right? My time in Philadelphia, I saw a lot of young people who looked like me, who came from the very same backgrounds I did, unfortunately lose their lives, right? So it was an opportunity. As I sat in homicide reviews, I kind of seen the trajectory of their lives. You start off in the child welfare system, juvenile justice system, adult system, and now you've either been a perpetrator or a victim of a crime. So, when this opportunity popped up, it was really an opportunity to work with young people, which has always been my passion. And then, use, everything I know in regards to intervening and really trying to get ahead of what we're doing here.
Okay. So what are the top 3 drivers for this project that Delaware County is basically proposing?
Mm-hmm. So in terms of the drivers, I think first and foremost, we're at the place we are. The facility was shut down in March of 2021 for some very serious allegations, right? Sexual, physical, and psychological abuse of young people. I think that the county is at a point where they understand that they want to take more of a proactive approach in helping young people. But I also, there's a lot of opportunity in this current moment, right? Because the facility shut down, because I'm looking at the data for the past maybe 5 years, and those admissions have declined almost 90%. If you look at fiscally what it costs to run a facility like that, I think there's an opportunity to say, okay, well, we don't have a facility, we're building a brand new one, right? What's the best use we can get out of the building, right? Does it make sense for it to just be a detention center, or is there an opportunity to service young people in different ways that ultimately helps them from ever getting to the detention center? I think that's what we're exploring.
So it's going to be more like a vocational?
So what we did was if you kind of look at maybe like a duplex, right? A duplex, so it's a building and it has a entrance A, entrance B, right? So, obviously there's a service that the county is saying that they need in terms of detention. But on the other side, you got to look at it maybe at like a community rec center. We're calling it a community resource center, but it's open space, right, for programming, right? Classrooms. We're trying to build in a music studio, podcast area for young people, a barbershop, a kitchen, right? So there is a workforce component, right, where you can come in, you can maybe get your safe serve, you can maybe learn how to cut hair, things of that nature. But we looked at like an even reporting center model, right? So we know that a young person is most likely to come in contact with law enforcement between the times of 4 p.m. and 9 p.m., right? So it's all about having a strategic intervention during that time, right? We can pick you up from school, we can get you there, we can get you in classes. There's also a computer lab there, so we're looking to partner with Widener or other universities around getting these kids academic support. Again, just trying to address some of the root causes why a young person may come in contact with law enforcement. And to be honest, right, I mean, initiatives like this are most successful if we have one pretty much in every area. We know sometimes there's financial constraints. So, what we tried to do is use a centralized location. And for me, what I always say is this particular center isn't the end all be all, right? Okay. It isn't the answer to the problems, right? It may be one of the solutions. But my goal is, establishing a warm handoff process. So we know good people in the city of Chester do great work. Brothers like Corey Long, JP, other folks who are working with young people, right? Let's start that engagement maybe at the center, right? But our goal is to transition you back to your community, so you're well aware of who the people who are doing good in your community, and you continue to work with them long after you leave the center.
So there will be like a rehabilitation component. So what I'm hearing is, if I think I'm hearing it correctly, you don't have to actually be in that facility to utilize the facility.
Right. So again, there is a very small percentage. I think last year there was 100 and maybe 9 or 10 of young people who ended up in detention in Delaware County. About 500, close to 600 young people were arrested. Only a little bit over 100 were actually put in detention. But there's still 400 plus young people who came in contact, right? We want to make sure that we can service them, right? Understand what their needs are, and do that at the center. But again, there was a community member at our last meeting in Chester who had mentioned a time that he was, as a young person, he was detained. He said the place was so great that he would do anything to come back, right? And that's real, right? That's real. But our message is you don't have to get arrested to come here, right? And even long after you may be out the system, right? But if you fall, if you're 21 and under, right, there's still services for you. It may even just be a pop-in, like, hey, what jobs are available, what resources are available. It might just stop by and get flyers. It might be stop by and get something to eat. But we want to be able to provide that, and we want to be able to provide transportation as well, right? We know it's not ideal to get there.
So will there also be a component put in place where a previous offender can maybe come back and do like a mentorship of other young offenders? Of course.
I've had a lot of success in the city of Philadelphia working with formerly system-involved people. Right? I led a team of probably close to 70 former juvenile lifers, former convicts, right? And we use them to use their influence and talk to young guys on the corner and say, listen, I already took this route, right? Let's see if we can connect you to jobs, things of that nature. In the city of Philadelphia, me and my partner also started credible messengers going into the detention center. They had a list of young people, which they called a stay away list, was essentially a group of young people who within the center were violent, were causing some issues, right? And they had to be kind of removed from other folks within the center. So we started having our team go in there, started talking to them, addressing them, feeding them, right? And, the skin in the game I had was, listen, you're a young person who outside was known to carry a pistol, right? So I want to start building a relationship with you now, right? So you can associate the logo on that van with the help, right? And, we're going to be as innovative as possible, bringing in the folks that we know that have rapport and have the rapport to work with young people down at the center. And, that's being looked at as something that's very innovative across the nation now, but we started that in Philadelphia.
So what about the vetting process? So I know, like any other organization, when it's dismantled, sometimes those same bad apple staffers end up back in the facility and then institute the same behavior that was there before. So what about the vetting process? How is that going to take place?
Yeah. So I think number one, it starts with, for me, just in terms of that position, right? We gotta professionalize that profession, right? You ain't a corrections officer, right? We're gonna change the name. You're a counselor. We're gonna require a lot more just in terms of your training, right? I think for me, it's important to have folks who have community background, public defender, different folks in that interview process. So now you're meeting with a panel, right? You're meeting with a panel of people, and you're interviewed, and it may be a 2 or 3 step process. But I think, we're going to have people working with our kids every single day. We have to take the measures in place to make sure that, we're properly vetting them, really looking at a person through their probationary period, right? So it ain't a guaranteed after your 30 or 60 or 90 days, right? Really evaluating that process, really implementing youth perspective, right? So you work with Dave every single day. How's he doing, right? You incorporate all that stuff in there, and at that point, you can make an informed decision.
Got it. So on this panel, do you think it would be useful if you had a youth on there on the panel?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course, a youth, a parent, right? You all stakeholders involved, right? Community.
Nice.
You gotta have them at the table, and for me, the perspective, community's perspective, number one, is probably the most important perspective, because long after I'm here, right? Long after this center's established, community's going to be here, so they got to be part of what we're building.
So I know that there were at least 3 meetings that I'm aware of that was held in reference to the facility.
Yeah.
What was your takeaway from those meetings?
Yeah. There's a mix, right? So, I can understand a lot of what I heard. My biggest takeaway is, community needs to be heard, right? There's a lot of underlining kind of issues that need to be resolved. And I always be transparent. I don't have all the answers here, and I'm not the savior here, right? But the biggest thing is, you can clearly tell that community wasn't as used to government coming out and saying, hey, can we partner? What do you want? What do you need? And then there's just a lot of hurt associated with the former center, right? And that's real. And, I think those are my 2 biggest takeaways, that folks are very hurt in terms of the past, and, they feel like they haven't been heard.
Yeah, I feel like the community feels that way because we're normally just given something. We're never asked our opinion. Yeah. And half the time when there is a meeting had, it's already done.
Yeah.
And they're just coming to put that on their books to say, oh, well, we talked to the community and this was the community
Check
input.
it off, right? Yeah.
And it's not a meeting of the mixed community that I have seen. It's more so of let's pick these people because they're going to go along with the agenda.
Right.
And, they're going to be okay with it. But in those meetings, I did see a lot of mixed views.
Yeah.
People, wanting to take the money, the 45 or the 40 million, and, dump it back into the community. But what I also realize is people are not abreast to what's already in the community. So you do have a lot of youth organizations. You do have a lot of nonprofits. And if we could probably get like a database and put all those things together, I think people would be more agreeing of those things because of the fact that they don't know, or sometimes we don't care to know. Yeah. Sometimes we just want to come out and complain. But for the most part, those meetings were very informed. I did like the layout. Now, I'm just going to be real transparent. I'm a person that feels though we do need the facility. We need the facility for a lot of different reasons. And I like the fact that you said, it's going to be like kind of like an open door policy. We'll pick you up, between the hours of 4 and 9, we're going to come. If you're having difficulties, reach out to us. Yeah. If you need, any type of services, reach out to us. You can utilize the facility, not just by being in the facility. And I like that. Yeah. Because we need to, the young adults need to know that there is a safe place.
Right.
And I feel like we need a lot of those safe places in the community.
Yeah, I agree. And, I'm very fortunate, I would say that, from the good brothers who brought me in local government and taught me local government, they've always taught me that government doesn't happen from a desk, right? And even when we ran the Office of Violence Prevention out the mayor's office in Philly, we tried to run it like a community-based organization. We had entities where, folks were applying for grants through the city. Come on down to us, and we're gonna walk you through how to do that, right? So I think we got to have that open door policy. We got to be able to want to meet with folks. We got to, be inclusive with community. Now, again, it's not ideal to have folks come out to Lima, right? But I think we get creative around it, and there's a lot of evidence around. I'll speak for myself, right? When you get out your neighborhood sometimes, and what you're exposed to, that can be life changing. Right?
Absolutely.
That could be life-changing. There's more than life than that 6 or 8 block radius that you've known your entire life. And for myself, when I was exposed to outside my neighborhood, it was just like, wow, like there's so much more to this world.
It's like a breath of fresh air.
For sure. So not that I'm saying Lima's that, but again, we just want to be able to help young people.
So is the facility going to be called Lima again, or their name is going to change?
No, not at all. It's not even going to be called a detention center.
Okay.
Right? Now, I really want to figure out a way that we can get community input on what we call it, right? But also understand that because there's been some traumatic things that happened, that happen to people there, right? Some folks are just like, don't matter what you call it, don't matter, right? But I think it's more of a family, youth and family, justice service center or something like that. But definitely not a detention center, and we want to change that narrative for sure.
Got it. What processes and procedure are in place to ensure that the community has access to public reports and data related to the facility and rehabilitation of the children in the facility?
What I will say is this, right? Coming in, the lack of data surprised me so much, right? Like, how do you make decisions without the proper data, right? Like I came in, a lot of questions I asked okay, tell me what parts of the county. I knew Adelaide, right? And I lived in Chester, so, I got a lot of love for Chester. But, I knew in Adelaide where kids possibly would be coming from. But, where are kids coming from? What times of the day are they coming in contact with? What services do we currently have? How often are they used? These are a lot of questions I asked early on. The county allowed me to contract an organization called the Center for Children Law and Policy, CCLP, from Washington, D.C. And they have a lot of experience going into different municipalities, right, helping assessing what's going on and helping us give a game plan. So I always say, this facility, a lot of talk around the facility, but on the other side, there's a lot of talk around getting an understanding of what we have, what we need for kids. That's happening, and by the end of this year, we'll have that report complete. And at that point, we'll kind of have an strategic area that we can invest in terms of community. And we're talking about pre-arrest programs. We're not waiting for you to get arrested to put you in a program, right? We want to know who's most likely to come in contact, what parts of the county, what time of the day, and we need to have programs in place that specifically address that, and that's what we're trying to do.
Wow, that's an awesome game plan. I feel like if that was implemented throughout almost every area of Delaware County, we will be more proactive than reactive. Because I think oftentimes, we operate off of the factor of, oh, well, this just happened. Let's hurry up and try to figure it out. But if we have like-minded people sitting down at the same table trying to figure things out, and, different organizations already come into contact with the youth, and they're like, okay, so in this particular area, these folks are beefing with these folks. So let's not put them all together. Like it used to only be one high school when I was coming up. So it was like, okay, so we bringing the West, the East together. It's like, okay, it's going to be a bonfire here. So, if we could get ahead of it and get that part of it figured out, I think we'll be well off.
Yeah. I mean, the tough part is prevention work is seed-bearing work, right? So a lot of times you don't see the results of the fruits of your labor.
No. Right?
Could be 10 years down the line. So prevention gets it by a rap, and it's also tough to see a forest with a tree in front of you, right? So, some of those kind of immediate strategies that have some of them short-term kind of outcomes, right? A lot of folks invest in that, which is why you have a place like a potential detention center, right? Because there's young people right now who are scoring on a risk assessment system that they need detention, right? So I can understand both sides, but we got to get ahead of it, like you said, and really start focusing on the prevention aspect on it. So it's my goal to have, this grand center that, allows community to come in. But, on the secure detention side of it, I would like it to be empty.
Wow.
And down the line, let's convert it to a homeless shelter or let's convert it to a residential program. But we got some work to do before we get there.
You have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
But that is a great plan to see it empty. So the current area where it's going to go where the previous detention center was.
Right. So we're working with the architect now, right? And he's given us a feasibility study on how much it would cost to knock the place down, right, and then build it from the ground up. Again, intentionally around having it be a dual purpose and having it look and feel a lot different. I think some of the ideas he showed me, from the outside, I really think it's going to look like a college or a school, right? And so it isn't going to be an eyesore to the community. It's going to be a lot more welcoming to families and community members who want to work there, and less traumatic for kids. And I think that's the most important.
So it's not going to have the fencing that's currently around it.
No.
Okay.
And if you visit any of the other centers within an hour here, none of them have it. Right?
Oh wow.
None of them have it. Philadelphia doesn't have it. Bucks County, Montgomery County, right? I visited all these centers. They don't have a fence, but the way Lyman was built in terms of its operations, right? I can see just from the operation standpoint why it was needed. There was a lot of things that could go wrong, right? There was a lot of ways that kids could exit the building if something went wrong, right? But I think now they're built a lot more with understanding that you don't necessarily need it, right?
Okay.
One thing that I did, about that particular facility that a lot of other centers said they wish they had was there's a lot of green grass, right? There's a lot of outdoor space. So we're going to try to still incorporate that piece because that's kind of what made Delco unique. But also, for that initial, you come up and there's a barbed wire fence. There's no need for that here at all.
Yeah, barbed wire fence that's moving once you get up to a certain part of it.
Right.
It's like, as most people would call it, baby jail.
Yeah, for sure. And I think we all felt that coming in, me and my team, when we saw the building. And we knew immediately, the place had to be a lot more trauma-informed.
So when you thought of taking on this task, what did that look like for you?
Tough.
Considering where you've come from, what did that look like?
Tough. From a personal and professional perspective, it's been a challenge, right? And I'll be transparent, right? Human nature is always to run, right? And go where it's easier. Coming to Delaware County, I didn't have the contacts I had in Philadelphia. I didn't necessarily have the rapport I had with everybody, right?
So you were the new guy on the block.
New guy, new kid in school, right? So all the challenges that come with that, trying to establish relationships, and some I'm still trying to establish, but it's been tough. But I think one thing that's kept me here is kids, right? I truly believe that things have to be in place to help kids here. And I, in good conscience, I couldn't run without making sure something's in place that's going to help some kids here.
So are you in contact with those other facilities where the youth that are supposed to be in our county are? Yeah,
so again, coming in, that was another challenge, right? You gotta build a rapport with these other folks who are running the other centers, because essentially now they're my colleagues, and I'm asking to borrow space, and I went about it a little bit wrong my first 6 months. I'm just asking, right? And I understand you got to politic a little bit, and it's like me bringing my kids to your house, like, Miss Evans, can they stay here, right? You like, all right, how long? Like, what's going on?
And where they
right,
from?
Exactly. So I think a lot of that still has happened, but they've been real supportive of me, right? And even though all the contracts that we were able to establish, with the exception to the facilities that are way far out, they've all kind of built in a caveat of, yeah, you can come in, but something goes wrong, you better come get this kid in 24 hours, right? And all types of different things. But even with that being said, they've been real supportive of me. My background isn't in corrections, right? Isn't in facilities. So they've been a great support system to me when I just have technical questions around what happens when here? Do you have a policy on this? Can I check it out?
So let's just say, for instance, if something does happen very tumultuous with the youth that's placed somewhere else, and they say, well, you got to come get this child now.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah. So again, and a lot of that pressure is on our local courts, right? So, even from like a taxpayer perspective, we might have to send the sheriff's office way out there to get him, pay for his overtime, overnight him. But again, if a facility asks for a young person to get picked up, we got 24 hours to come get them.
Wow.
And then our probation and courts office have to call around and say, hey, can this kid come here? Can he come here? So I understand sometimes the tough position it puts them in as well, right? So that kind of just also supports the need for something a little bit more local.
Yeah.
Because it isn't ideal to have the DA and the courts and sheriff, guys at the phone 3 o'clock in the morning trying to figure something out, right? And I know we're public servants, right? And we got to do for the public, but we're people as well.
So is the process for all children? Well, I would assume that all children in this stage where we are right now can't be put in a facility. So what is the process for those kids that don't meet that requirement to be put in a facility but came in contact with law enforcement?
Right. So again, and I love that you asked that question, right? Because I think a lot of folks have to understand what the phase of detention is and what different touch points you have in the juvenile justice system, right? So you're entered into the juvenile justice system from what they call a referral, but ultimately is a arrest, right? And even if you backtrack there, right, a lot of times when you call the police, it's community who may call police, all right, or a police officer who
or their
see
own
a
family,
see a person, right? So that's kind of if we're looking to keep kids out, that's really the first touch point is community, right? Are there any programs or any initiatives that supports family around? My son may be acting up, or it might be a situation. I might be able to divert him into a program myself, as opposed to maybe calling local police, which I have a lot of love and respect for. But that referral comes from the referral in the system comes from police. That first call is the district attorney's office, right? So the district attorney, based off of the allegations that they hear, they make a decision, right? Let's say very serious allegations like attempted murder, anything related to a person, burglary, robbery, right? At that point, we're going to say, on face value, these allegations are very serious. This young person is a threat to himself or somebody else, right? We're going to intake them in the juvenile courts, right? So your first diversion point is, well, you got police who can choose to arrest or not arrest, right? You have community who chooses to call or not call. You have a district attorney can say, this may be a low-level offense. This may be a first-time offender, right? We're going to put them in a diversion program as opposed to enter them in the system. And even once they're in the system, our chief probation officer has the opportunity to say, so there is a formal assessment done, right? It's called the Padre, where they run it, and if it says they're scoring for detention, then at that point they have to find detention bed. But there's alternatives to detention, right? GPS monitors, community programming, right? And whether we have all that here in Delco, it's important to know that there are opportunities. And a lot of my job is looking into those touch points and trying to figure out, is there an opportunity for some of those mid to lower level offender young people and get them into it. But detention in its truest sense, it's really just a temporary holding space, right? It's just a 2 week, in a traditional sense, maybe like a 2 week period, right? That gets a young person in front of a judge, and then it's the courts who decides what's next for them. The courts can say, so they have their trial, they have their pre-trial period, and the courts may say at a adjudication hearing or deposition hearing, right, probation, they may say a placement, right, a long-term placement, or they may say not guilty, right, and in terms of detention as true as offense, it's really just a temporary holding phase. But because it's so temporary, I think what I've come to assess is, people treat it like just like a daycare, right?
Yeah.
There isn't a lot of structure, activities. You might be playing spades, right? And you got to understand with kids, man, when you got a certain amount of kids in this space, they're going through tough times, there isn't a lot for them to do, right? That's how things happen.
Yeah.
Right?
And they're coming from all different walks of life.
Exactly. And going through a very tough time.
Yeah.
So, we got to make sure that we don't treat detention like, we just babysitting for 2 weeks, right? But also with the federal laws changing, now a young person who has committed or allegedly committed a very serious crime like murder, attempted murder, previously they would go straight to adult prison, right? But now you see all the national stories around young people who are minors in adult prisons, and very serious things happen to them, right? So with the federal laws changing, a lot of young people now during their trial period are going to be in juvenile detention, right? And that's kind of how the field's changed a bit. So now, you might have young people traditionally may have stayed in detention for 2 weeks and moved on. I've seen at least 2 young people last year who have been in detention for over a year because they're fighting an adult case, and that process is different, right? So now, you got to have a lot more in place and spades and right?
Yes.
You got a young person there for a year. And you got to start that reentry process from day one because, we have no say in whether a young person is guilty or innocent. But, we have to start our rehabilitation process like they are innocent because even, we can't keep them here forever. At one point in time, they're going back in the community. And we really have to invest in what's next for them.
I didn't even know that the process for a juvenile was 2 weeks. So it's not like an adult process. The adult process sometimes takes almost a year.
Yeah. So again, the average length of stay for a young person in detention in Delaware County specifically range from 13 to 16 days.
Wow.
Right now, that's before the federal laws change. Now, again, like I'm saying, we're having young people have a much longer length of stays, but traditionally, and all that stuff is public. You go on the JCJC website, and they have information specific for Delaware County, and you can see how long kids are staying, how many allegations are happening in the county. I think last year was somewhere just under 600, 550 something, right? All that stuff you can look up and you can see if the numbers are trending up, trending down, and what that looks like.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's good to know. In a sense. I don't really want to know. But in a sense, that's good to know. How can a community support this initiative in a positive way? And what can we do as a community to ensure that our children do not end up in this facility?
Well, I think, for me, just keep showing up, keep voicing your opinion, but let's focus on solutions, right? I understand, right? I understand that there could potentially much more impactful kind of seed-bearing, root cause directed, initiatives that, this money could be used better for our public schools, things of that nature. But my thing is just, if we're going to have a center here, right? Let's make it as innovative and as forward-thinking as possible. And we need the community's input, right, in terms of what programming. So we ask you to keep showing up, but keep showing up with ideas.
Got it.
And yeah.
So will there be more meetings, and how can the community voice their input for those that have not been to the meetings or won't be able to make it to any future meetings?
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, if whether you're an individual organization who has concerns and wants to work with us, I always encourage folks, you can reach directly out to me. There's a board that oversees me, right? We've sat down with youth organizations, right? And it doesn't have to be a public setting, right? My preference is private, right? Because we can just be transparent and talk. And, but again, you can reach out for meetings. We intend to have these meetings throughout the year, right? Probably on a quarterly basis. But, as for me, it's important that as we move forward with any steps of this project, that I continue to include community. And whether you want to yell at me and say this is a horrible idea, or you want to say, give some constructive criticism, I'm committed to just keep coming out because, again, I need you.
So that the community is aware. Say that part again where you said I'm overseen by a board. So you're not the end all be all to the process. You're not the person that's making the full decisions. Yeah. Everybody has a supervisor. So let them know again that there is a board that oversees you.
There's a board of 10 individuals. Some are court elected, some are county officials, and some are community, those who live in Delaware County that oversees me and really are kind of my governing body. Oftentimes, and it's not just community, it's also internally, right? We try to turn this into the Dave Irizarry show, and it really isn't, right? This isn't about me. I don't want it to be about me. I think we were talking before the show, like, I don't even feel comfortable being in front of the spotlight. It's not who I am naturally, can be, but I'm just a hard worker behind the desk, and that's kind of, what I've geared my public service kind of career toward, just doing the work. I don't need the accolades, but I want to help people. And,
I know that when you think of a facility, as we're calling it, or a facility, normally a person would think it's just for juvenile men. Well, young adults. Will there be different programs set aside for the juvenile young ladies? Because believe it or not, young ladies
It's important.
are there as well.
It is important right now in any correctional kind of facility, right? That 80-20 split is everywhere, right? It's predominantly 80% male and probably that 20%. But because of that, we're taught to focus on, you know, your most targeted population, male. But I think it's important for me, understanding I'm a father of 2 daughters myself, right? We gotta have initiatives in place for young ladies, right? It's got to be culturally relevant, right? And you know, I was even talking to my deputy director, who's came from Philly like me, and you know, just I was telling her, like, we were talking more so about operation model. We got to make sure we order hair products. We got to get everything, you know, young women need, because all that, there's a correlation between their behavior, right? You know, I was always, you know, I was an athlete growing up, but, you know, a coach always told me was, you know, if you look good, you feel good. If you feel good, you're going to play good, right?
Yes.
And that's kind of the same concept, right? We got to allow young people who are in the center to still have everything they would have on the outside, right? Whether it's, you know, make sure they could, you know, what we need, right?
Yes.
Everything we need, make sure. So we want to incorporate that for sure.
So what if there is a chance that you encounter a young adult female and she's not forthcoming when it comes to her being, let's say, pregnant, because maybe she didn't know, or maybe she's thinking, if I tell them, they're going to ship me somewhere else. How would that look, and how would that be handled?
Well, I think for us, you know, if we can, number one, if I can create an environment where a young person feels comfortable enough to come to me with that information, right, we got to take it very serious. You know, one thing that I've asked of the architect in terms of the facility on the detention side, right, is we got to have a real sophisticated medical unit, right? We got to have, whether we're subcontracting CHOP or another organization, right, we got to have nurses and professional folks on site that young people can receive the services they need, right? And it starts with that, right? And you know, I've even met folks in the city of Chester, right, that who you know, I'm looking for culturally relevant professionals who know how to deal with young black and brown kids, right? So I want their first time. I don't want their first time, but it'd be important for me for their first time seeing a black dentist, seeing a black doctor, right? Black teachers in the classroom who look like them, right? All of that is very important to me, right?
It is.
And it isn't all about race, but I just based on my own personal experience, when I was around people who looked like me and were doing something very positive, that changed my life. And I want to do that for young people as well.
That is very, what is the word I'm looking for? That's awesome. And I say that because even if you're not, you know, within the penal system, as they call it, even just being an actual adult, sometimes you can encounter a black dentist. Sometimes you can encounter a black doctor. And they're very far and few in between. I know for me, I have reached out to maybe a neurologist. And it was, well, we're still in the COVID era, however, but it was during that time. And I didn't get the sense and the feeling of what I thought I was going to feel. So I think that is very important, because those children may have never encountered that. But if you, and not saying that just because it's us, we're going to do them any better. Because sometimes it could be us and we don't do them right either. However, I do feel like that's an awesome situation.
It's the exposure that counts for me, right? I think a lot of times in some of the communities we come from, you know, and I always only speak from my own experience, but, you know, we're told that it's the entertainment industry, right? When that don't work out for me, the next successful thing I saw from somebody who looked like me, was doing well from like a monetary standpoint, right, was the corner, right? And we're not really exposed too much. And it wasn't for me until I saw somebody who looked like me, had a suit on, was neighborhood, right? And I'm like,
oh, wow.
I could do that.
I can do that too.
I could do that, right? You'll rarely see me dressed down at work, right? And there's folks who worked with me for 15, 10 years, right? And I've never seen with a sweater, because for me, it's about the narrative change, right?
Yes.
And the folks who brought me in, that's one thing they always told me, right? We only see ourselves a certain way. So, you know, it was in terms of some of my former mentors. They were like, we got to just change the narrative, right? We got to see people who look like us, who are doing good, and there's a lot more than that corner. You can make that corner
There's
salary,
definitely more than that corner.
right? Using this right here.
Yes.
And I've always been a big fan of, what you learn in these neighborhoods is transferable anywhere in terms of your survival tactics. That's transferable to the boardroom. It's transferable to the business world, right? But we gotta really kind of harness that energy in there, right? And I always tell young guys that, like, if you survive that corner, you could survive anything. Right?
And they gotta want it.
For sure.
They gotta want it. Oftentimes, you'll look at your brother or your cousin, you'll be like, oh, I want to be just like him. But realistically, you don't want to be just like him.
That's all you know.
Exactly. Because, that's all they know. That's all they see. They're like little sponges. I know my grandson, I had posted a video on Facebook, and he was actually moving the adult vacuum. When my daughter sent it to me, I said, wait a minute. Now he moving it, and his feet is still on the ground. His feet only lifted up once, and he was just moving it. And then he turned to her and was smiling. So I had said to her, I said, well, maybe I should put the disclaimer up that we don't want no child labor laws coming for us. But he was actually enjoying it. And it was just more so of him seeing what his mom is doing. So I think the more positive energy that we put out to the young adults, the more positive energy we'll get back.
For sure.
And it'll reflect on our community because they are our future.
Yep.
And if we're not putting out the good energy, as I call it, we're not going to get the good energy back.
And we also got to understand, like, those days of talking a young person to a job and committing 25 years of his life to that job, those days are just done.
Yes.
Right? When this young person can start a podcast and based off of X amount of views can make a living off himself, where you can create a T-shirt that becomes popular and it blow, right? So I always, we got to grow with times, right? We got to grow with times, and we got to, again, I always say it, right? The same hustle that we instill outside, right? That can be applied to an LLC, and it's the same thing. If you don't work, you don't eat. It's the same thing on the corner, right?
Yes.
And
because I don't know how they do it. I'm gonna just put that out there. I don't know how they do it. They out there rain, sleet, and then when you think about it like this,
you'd be surprised what you could do when you have to do it.
True.
Right? That's what I always say.
But then I look at,
or you feel you have to do it.
I maybe feel that way because I've never been put in that position. Now, I have had to do some things that I may have not liked.
Right.
Go to a job, bite my tongue almost off because I know I need that check. Now, it's the same for them. But again, I don't know how they do it because it's rain, sleeting, and hailing outside. And I'm looking like, they on the corner? Or, so-and-so call you, like, so-and-so got locked up. He got locked up with a brick. And I say to myself, they still selling drugs? Wait, is they still selling drugs?
I don't condone it, but I don't make excuses for it, but I understand it. For
Yeah.
sure. I understand why you do what you do.
Because it's hard out here.
Right, for sure.
It's hard.
For sure.
I know for me, just this week, I was negotiating. I was the insurance broker. Right. So my agent had called me at the beginning of the month, and he was like, I just wanted to give you a courtesy call and let you know that your insurance is going to 50%. He said, I'm gonna just be honest, I ain't never seen nothing like that. I said, wait, give me the number.
Right.
He said, $613. Now it was $1,274 plus that $613. I said, wait a minute, that's almost $2,000. No.
Right.
So call my car insurance. And I'm like, can you give me a quote or whatever? So it got lost in translation. He didn't put my whole email in, so it never got to me.
Right.
And a part of me was like, well, let me call back because something don't seem right. He was like, oh, I sent it to the wrong information. But
glad you was on top of it.
It was down $500. I said, let's go.
Right.
And that's probably because my car insurance and my life insurance is over there. So it's like, okay, I'm getting a 35% discount. So the homeowner's insurance agent, he like, well, I don't want to try to sway the vote, but did you get that quote from me about the auto insurance? I said, I did, but then I got a letter saying, y'all can't fulfill it, so I'm going to stay over here.
Right.
He's like, oh, sorry to see you go. I said, I'm blessed to keep that $500 and something in my pocket.
A lot of folks don't know how to advocate for themselves.
No, and you have to. It can be frustrating. You can get to the point where you like, I'm on hold for 20 minutes. I will put the phone on speaker and continue to do what I'm doing until you listen.
Right.
You got to be patient.
Well, shout out to you for that because that's big.
And some of us are not patient. So I look at myself, like I had to take my daughter to the orthodontist yesterday. And we get there, I'm all on pins and needles because she got to get some work done. And the lady helped me out. I said, look at God. I said, listen, I'm already the nanny, the trainer, the nutritionist. I'm everything you would have called it. I said, here I am, you helping me out with this situation. So it worked out in my favor. Don't like all the running around I have to do, but it worked out in my favor. So is there anything that you feel as though the public has not been made aware of and you would like to tell them?
I think for me, it's just important to let folks know that, yes, there is a potential facility happening, but there's a lot of work being done on the back end to really try to improve services here in the county, right? And I think for me, I would have loved to start that initiative as soon as I got here, right? But there's a process. Mm-hmm. We had to create the proposal, we had to put it out, we had to bid for it, we had to interview folks, right? And it was almost September to the end of the year before we got select somebody, and just letting folks know, I hear you loud and clear in terms of prevention, right? And trying to get ahead of things. That's kind of what I've tried to build my career off, the preventative sciences and getting ahead of something before it happens. And I think sometimes that gets lost in transition because there's a center happening and, folks aren't happy with it. And then a lot of municipalities like Chester, right, have, need that financial kind of resource.
Yes.
And when you hear you got X amount of dollars for this thing, right, that historically, not even just in Delco, like, in the history of America, right, hasn't done great by kids. It's kind of like a slap in the face, and I can understand that. That's why I don't take anything personal. But I also want to let folks know that, I truly, wholeheartedly care about kids. And, anything I do here, I do with the standard of, if my child had to be here, right, would I accept this? And, I've said it at public meetings where just hold me accountable. But again, allow me to kind of lay some foundation.
Yes.
And get something done.
Yes. Hold me accountable. I like that. And I like the other part where you said, if my kid had to come here, what would I want it to look like?
Yeah.
Because you never know when any of us would be put in that situation.
Right.
I know for myself, I have 2 adult daughters and 1 teenager. Right. But at the same time, what would you want your child to have to go through?
Right. What type of program?
And you never know when you may be put in that situation.
That's
it
real.
could be a situation of your child getting bullied in school.
Yep.
And they know what to take in at school, or they think in their mind, okay, so, not all school have metal detectors.
Right.
Let's be clear.
Right.
But they know how to finagle the system, as we call it,
Yeah.
and get something in
Right.
to harm that person that's harming them every day.
Right.
And you don't have, sometimes there's not too good of a rapport when it comes to these schools. Let's be clear. There's oftentimes, I just was on social media the other day and a young lady was saying, I'm about to take my child out because she's being bullied and the school's not doing nothing. Now, you want to offer up some solutions, but then you don't want to be insensitive.
Yeah.
But it could be a situation as small as that, as we would think is small, but it's not small to that child.
Listen, you put a person, no matter the age, in survival mode, right? Take away some of their basic needs, right?
Never
a
know
lot
what
of it
they'll
is,
do.
the need for safety, right? You can't, your moral compass at that point is compromised. You can't even be yourself, right? You're in survival mode. So, I can understand why people make decisions, but, with that being said, a decision that you make that isn't the best shouldn't be the end of your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't, and particularly with kids, from the moment they walk into a facility that's correctional, we got to start the rehabilitation process, start the reentry process from day one. And, these are all things I've seen, and I hope to implement when we have a center here.
Wow. Well, it was my pleasure to have you on the show.
Listen, I appreciate it. Like I said, it's my podcast debut. I stay away from the camera.
Podcast debut. I love it. I love it. I love it. And I hope that, the community that's watching took away a lot of information, because there was a lot of takeaways from this interview. A lot of takeaways. I wanted to get a lot of the information out there that a lot of people couldn't hear because they was too focused on the no instead of the let me hear what the person has to say. Because often we as people, we don't want to hear nothing. We're just straight on the train of, no, I don't want that. It's closed. No, I don't want that. Or it's closed, so no kids going out there. Where you send them kids at? So if you sending them kids to this place, and this place, well, why you can't keep sending them there? Not even knowing that you basically are doing a broker system and trying to, get this child here, or no, well, this child doesn't need detention. Okay, you can be on house arrest, or this child can just go through the diversion program. So there's a lot of different other mechanisms that are being put in place for the youth that most people aren't aware of. And I'm glad you touched on those points as well, because now people will realize that It's a process.
Yeah.
I couldn't just come in day one and say, okay, so this is my vision. It had to be reviewed, approved, reviewed, approved. Yeah. We had to hire some people. We had to let go of this person because this person wasn't working out. We had to bring this person on. So I'm glad that they were able to get all that information.
Well, listen, I appreciate you having me. My podcast debut, and I hope that you have 500 more episodes. This is great.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to also bring you back once the facility is up, once the facility is running. Once we've had
got some years for that, so let's bring it back before then.
A couple months or something like that. Yep. Yeah, it's always an opportunity to come back.
For sure.
If you want to get the message out, you have my number. Call me. We'll bring you on. Well, I'll bring you on, and then we can further discuss some things, even if it's like a hiccup in the road. Sure. Like, oh wait, it's in process, but it's not going to be till this, or we changed our mind on something. Yep. Because we want to be as transparent with the community as possible.
For sure.
So thank you again, and now I'm about to get into Addie's rant. The fun part, I guess is the fun part. I don't know. Some would say it's the best part of the show. I say the whole show is the best part, but So there was a lot of discussion that I have seen when it comes to the 3 new police Tahoe vehicles that were just brought on the scene to Chester. Now, let me be clear. Do we need those vehicles? Absolutely. Are those vehicles nice? Absolutely. Would you want to be put in a situation if you were in a medical emergency or your family member was in a medical emergency and now they're in the back of a vehicle that's not up to the standard that needs to be to hold that person? Yes, I'm telling you, you would, because you would. It's just astounding that, there's a perception that we're not supposed to have anything nice. And I say that because of the reactions that were coming from those 3 nice vehicles that we just received. Now, let me take it back a little bit further. During a court hearing, maybe a month or I want to say back last month, during a court hearing, there was a conversation that was had about the factor of us paying for things that we don't have. Now, when it comes to us paying for things that we don't have, those vehicles were one of those things. Now, I'm not going to say that we've paid for all 20 vehicles that we're going to get at some point, but we did pay for those vehicles. And the biggest part that the receiver was trying to make was we have to stop paying for things that we don't have. Now, granted, sometimes you need to make a deposit so that you can even get the process started when it comes to certain things. So I would think that's what it was, but that's not more of the hint that was being made. So I say all that to say those 3 vehicles are very nice. If I get a chance to flag a officer down, I will. And I want to see inside those vehicles. From the pictures that I've seen on Emergency Systems website, the vehicles are equipped with a lot of things that are needed in any community. So first of all, let's stop shortchanging Chester. We deserve, if not more, as well as other things that other communities have. When you ride out to Aston, when you ride out to Eddystone, when you ride out to all those neighboring surroundings, you don't see cars that like they can't get up the hill. I would not want to call the emergency services and the cop can't make it to me because he just broke down the street. So with all of that being said, I need us to take a chill pill for a little while when it comes to the things being brought to Chester that we actually need. There was even a talk of a person saying, we need more officers than we need vehicles. We do need more officers, but we need people to apply. So if you know someone that would like to be an officer in the city of Chester, have them to reach out and apply. We need officers as much as we need those vehicles. I also want to let you guys know, I'm not sure if we're going to have 23 vehicles, but, our chief officer, our chief of staff stated that, at some point we're going to have 20 vehicles. So please take a deep breath because the 3 is not just the end all be all of those new vehicles. And we need them, again. The next thing I wanted to talk on, during the MFRAC meeting with the receiver, there was talk of a new RFP being put out for a new parking vendor. Yes, we're getting a new parking vendor. The previous parking vendor is now also intertwined with the bankruptcy and also trying to do an interjection, which was rejected. So they're putting out an RFP for a new parking vendor. The next thing is, let's see. I'm not sure if anybody knows what the Chester Education Foundation is. Well, that is an area where you can go and get a job if you're between the age of 18 and 24. They will help you get a job. So I need you guys to contact Miss Elaine Green at the Chester Education Foundation at 419 Avenue of the States. The number is 610-364-1212. Miss Green needs young adults ages 18 to 24 to come over there so she can get them set up with jobs and make sure that we are making sure the community is well established when it comes to that area of jobs. I'm not sure if anybody was watching the MFRAC meeting yesterday, but Mr. Leonard Leitner, who is our chief of staff, I keep getting that name mixed up, our chief of staff, he did a presentation when it comes to trying to restructure our government over at City Hall. Now, he's proposing 55 more jobs. He also gave us the number of what it would take to house those 55 new jobs. That would be $2.5 million added on to the current budget that we have now. Now, let's be clear. There was also talks of if we had those services, would we be well off? Now, we did have all those services except for a few that he's trying to add in. Now, how we lost those services was because of the fact that we were paying for those services, but not paying into our pension fund. So that's one of the reasons why we're in the state that we're in. So when you think of how he wants everything structured, once you go back and watch that meeting, you'll kind of understand where we would be if we had the suitable funds to sustain the city. So when you think of those jobs and, if we had them or we didn't have them or what have you, think of the money factor. I also want you to realize that when you think of our parks and recreation, we have 874 square feet of parks. We only have 6 people, yes, 6 people to maintain those parks. We actually need additional people to maintain those parks so that we are giving our parks the well manicured and we're not riding past Memorial Park and saying, oh my goodness, they forgot this whole side of the grass. That's because it's only 6 staff for 874 square footage of parks. Let me make sure I'm telling you guys everything. Okay. Oh, the CFO position that was once open will be reopened because we have not been able to fill that position. That position will be going through like a consulting firm who's going to then choose that person who then will sit in front of the body of our elected officials to make sure that we get the right person. We need the right person when it comes to that position because we need to make sure that moving forward, once the receiver gets all of our finances in order, that we have someone to make sure they stay in order because that's very important. The other biggest component when it came to Mr. Leonard Leitner's presentation was he wants to separate human resources and finance. They are 2 big entities when it comes to our structure over at City Hall. So he wants to separate those 2. He wants to add in a risk management person. He wants to add in a housing person. He wants to add in all those necessary recipes so that when, we look at maybe when a cop gets into an accident, that we have the necessary paperwork being put in place and we have the person to manage all of those entities. I want to thank you guys again for tuning in to Straight to the Point with Adelaide Evans. I also want to thank our guest, Mr. David Irizarry. I hope I'm saying his name right. Irizarry. There we go. And I just want you guys to, look at the factor of our community and where it is. I'm going to keep on pushing the necessary information to make sure that everybody comes out and, everybody participates in what they need to participate in. So when you think of the entities of the Juvenile Justice Center, you want to sit down and write down what you want to see. Then reach out to the necessary person to make sure that information is being interpreted the right way. I also want to reiterate the factor that I host community conversations on Mondays at the Cat Center at 6 p.m. Come out. Next week, it will be a voter representative coming out to, give us the ins and outs of voting, to speak on the organization that she's working with, and different things of that nature. So I want you to come out, voice your opinion, get some more information, and make sure you get out to vote. We are in the last couple of days when it comes to the petitions for those folks that we want to see on the ballot for the May 16th election. If you have not signed if you have not signed a petition, make sure that you get out, sign some petitions, meet the folks. We can't keep harping on we want change, but we're not putting in the change. We have to be the change that we want to see. So I want to thank you all again for tuning into Straight to the Point with Adelaide Evans. Our guest for next week will be Miss Tiffany Fuller, and she will be coming in with a plethora of information when it comes to insurance, real estate, and different things of that nature. So thanks again, and thank you for tuning in.